one thing I have seen again and again is that some organizations, they have a culture where people don't feel safe, or people come there but they cover some aspects of their personality, their identity, their purpose, mission in life. In that case, they're not fulfilled. They cover, or they don't bring themselves wholly, they just come part of them, which means they're not giving all in, they're not giving their best, because they're not there, embraced, appreciated, and given the opportunity to come whole and give themselves whole. In your case, I have statistics. I want to hear yours. The statistics shows you that people, when they cover aspects of themselves, they are stressed, and many times high turnover comes because people are stressed out to go to that place where they're not themselves. How do you see that? What's your comment on that one?
Actually, if it's okay, I want to kind of flip it around.
Sure.
So, so I want to take what you said in terms of when people may not have the opportunity to express themselves. Flipping it around, sometimes people may not know themselves. That's why I mentioned part of my passion with the education piece is self-education, self-awareness, and self-mastery. Because when I do work with organizations and I do work on conflict resolution and communication skills, I also often talk about intra or internal communication. How the image we have of ourselves and how we communicate within ourselves a lot of times is represented in our reality outside of ourselves. And so to answer your question, one of the things that becomes really helpful when we're talking about these different intelligences and how we show up, and this is kind of, it ties also into why one of my focus is leading from a wellness approach, because those things might be dimensional, but they lead to the overall wholeness of the individual. Also, it leads to the wholeness of the organization. This helps people within the organization to create a safe space, an environment conducive for learning, growing, and sharing. And then if I am in a space where I know I'm safe, if I'm in a space where I know people care about me, I'm more willing to share. Also to share things that maybe it might be things about myself that I don't know that I'm even doing. And this is where leadership comes in. Leadership has that awareness of recognizing what the folks within your organization may need. Everybody may not need the same thing. What resources become available? So as leaders, we're helping not only people to be more resourceful, but to be more resilient. And some situations reposition themselves for success. Like, what does that look like? And so I often think about, as a leader, we want to live well, right? We want to lead well, but we also want to lead intelligently. And these intelligences really help us as leaders to navigate who we are as well, because you lead from who you are, not always where you are, right? And so
Yeah.
how we see ourselves, that leadership image of ourselves, really it becomes more habitual in our practices and how we show up. And in some situations, it may be environments that might be more toxic or not as effective, how we don't show up as leaders or as organizations.
I want to bring back what you mentioned about individuals, even if the environment is welcoming and they could be able to come all in. Sometimes individuals, they may not have the self awareness if they don't know themselves, or if they don't make efforts to know themselves better so that they show up with their true self is very important. I want to ask you, from your experience, what are some of the things people should do to increase their self-awareness, to know who they are, truly they are? Because sometimes when we talk about self-awareness, it could be superficial, because somebody could say, hey, I was born in this country, I'm this much old, and I do this, I do that, my family, they are so and so and so. Mainly these are important, but they are not superficial. We're talking about knowing one's true identity, what makes them unique, and what makes them valuable in terms of their identity and purpose. Do you have any suggestions? It could be based on your experience. How do you grow yourself? How do you increase your self awareness? What are some of the things people could do to increase their self-awareness, because even if the environment is there, even if the organization allows for people to come holistically, if they don't do some things from their side, they may not benefit. Can you give us some practical examples, even including how you grow and increase your self-awareness?
Right. So sometimes what people deal with is learned limitations based on their environments and how they grow up and their experiences. So one of the first things I ask is this question, and so this is really practical. It may seem really simple, but it can be really challenging. But it's also an opportunity. What do you want to be, do, and have? Again, what do you want to be, do, and have? Three areas that I often share with folks when they're trying to find their identity and who they are and how they want to show up and how they want to add value and extract value is first working on your mindset, working on your skill set, and third working on your tool set. So your mindset is the way you think and how you think. And also the paradigms that are running within you. So we all kind of have an inner program. What many people don't know is that majority of your results are being run by the inner program, whether you're aware of it or not. So that's the mindset. Then the skill set is actually learning skills that can help you to develop yourself, right? And then the last one is tool set, having different tools to help you to develop your skills and your mindset. So one practical way is journaling. Journaling gives people an opportunity to start thinking about stuff that's going on within them and putting it on paper. What happens with that is now you get a chance to see, to observe, to become aware, to gain clarity, or just to notice, right? To notice what's going on within you. So journaling is something that's helpful. Another thing that may be helpful for some folks, meditation. Meditation, and when I say meditation, it's not just one set way of meditating. It could be, it doesn't have to be traditional with your eyes closed, you sitting in a space where your legs are crossed. You could be like, for me, I'm a person that likes going to the beach. It could be walking by the water is really therapeutic for me and really, excuse me, it allows me to relax. And when I'm in a more relaxed state, it allows me to think more clearly and pause. So that's one thing that people can do. So they can journal, they can meditate. Also, writing down your goals. That is really helpful. So we say, well, isn't that the same as journaling? It can be, but not necessarily. So writing down your goals, what do you want to, again, answering those questions, what do you want to be, do, and have? That's a continuous thing in terms of it. And then I would also kind of mention a couple other things, like coaching is great for people to partner and find support to gain a skill set and also an awareness of who they are and what they are and being able to kind of bounce things off of other people. But those are just a couple of things off the top of my head that can really be beneficial. But there's a multitude of things.
Yeah, these are really very, very helpful. And many of this I personally do. They are very helpful to increase my self-awareness, to be in touch with who I am at a deeper level. One other thing I do is I take assessments. I remember for the first time I realized my preferences when I took MBTI test and DISC, TKI, how I prefer to handle conflicts. Until I took those assessments, I didn't know. Once I took those assessments, oh my gosh, this is how I handle conflict. This is how I prefer to communicate with people, and so on and so on. And therefore, I encourage everyone watching to take some assessments. Some of these assessments are online. Another thing I do is I pay attention to myself. I go back years and I try to evaluate, okay, what have I what have I been doing? What do I like the most? I go back and see myself and see, okay, I'm passionate about this thing. I hate this thing. This thing irritates me. This thing invokes my passion. And also, what I do is I ask feedback, the people around me. asking people, especially the people who know me, do you have any feedback for me? What is working as I communicate with you, work with you? What's not working as I communicate with you? And people are willing to share with you what's working and what's not working. And you're right, coaching is great. If you have some people ahead of you, if they are your mentor coaches, they could be able to see. Sometimes people I coach, I see their blind spots. They may not see it. I mentor some people, I know where they are because I was there and I could easily help them. Another thing I do is I want to hear yours. I read biographies, especially biographies of people that I admire, people who are on the same path like mine. They are ahead of me, but I want to read their biographies. The more I read their biographies, I could be able to understand who I am and what I'm supposed to do because I see someone already passed through that path. Because of that, my journey becomes a little bit easier. I'm self aware, knowing where I am going. Anything you want to add, or from your experience, especially in terms of assessment, do you ask your clients to take assessment before you coach, or do you take some assessments? I'm sure you take, but I want to hear what kind of assessment you have taken. And also in terms of learning from your heroes and heroines, people who went ahead of you, what do you think about that? If you in case have some examples or something you want to share to our audience.
Right. So that's a lot of great questions all at once. So I'll try my best to answer those questions. So one, I do use evaluations. I also would throw into that consideration is not only evaluations but training. And when I say training, a lot of trainings that allow you to recognize you, like I've taken things like mindfulness, a lot of the things that I was interested in led to certifications, which also led to some of the products, programs, and services that I provide because I saw such a richness and such an impact in my own personal life and my professional life that I wanted to share that with other folks. Hence why I'm so passionate about it. But definitely training like hypnotherapy, training like NLP, neuro linguistic programming, any type of training that allows you to be able to see yourself in a different perspective, a different life, or different light, excuse me, or also give you tools that you can use. That goes back to what I was saying about the mindset, the skill set, and the tool set. Sometimes people want to change their mind, but they don't have the skill set and the tool set to do it. So that becomes really helpful. What you mentioned about individuals in terms of biographies and autobiographies, I love things like that because part of what drives me is also what did other people overcome? What challenges they overcame to become opportunities? What resistance that they had that allowed them to recognize themselves or pivot, if you will, in their life or in their career. So I'm an avid reader. And so typically the things that I'm reading are things about either self-improvement, self-care, self-development, or just how people can become better versions of themselves. So those are things that I definitely look into. But like you said, I think evaluations, but I would say this, when taking evaluations, not to get stuck on the results only, but how can you incorporate the information that you get from the evaluations and how can you add it into what you're trying to be, do, and have in your life, right? Don't make it well, this is who I am, because the reality is that might be who you are right now, right?
Definitely.
But as we change our perspectives, I think it was the late great Wayne Dyer said, when you change your perspective, what you look at changes and how you see things change. And so I'm big on gaining information to better myself, not to gain information that I limit myself.
100%. You don't want to take these assessments so that you're condemning to one preference or one style. When I coach or when I facilitate workshops, one of the disclaimers that I provide is that these assessments, they are snapshots. which means they don't represent you except right now. And there are many factors that may screw or skew this way or that way based on how you answer those questions. There could be some instances, immediate instances, and these instances might have influenced you when you answer those questions. Another thing, I tell them that I have certifications in MBTI, emotional intelligence, and so on. And one of the things I tell them that don't read these results before we talk and I give you context. I don't want them to go and see the results and say, oh my gosh, and make judgments and conclusions. First, I have to give them context. And then what you said is very powerful. These information, they are neutral. You will decide. For example, if somebody tells you that you communicate this way, it's good to know. If you already know that, it's not a big deal. You already know that. Let's say, but if you didn't know about that, this is a great revelation. Now you know yourself a little bit better. But at the end of the day, you're going to be the one making the decision. My job as a coach is not to tell you how to handle that information. Once you have that information, I may ask you, okay, how do you want to act on this information? What do you want to do with this information? And you are the superstar to say, you know what, good to know. But given where I am in life or in my career, in my leadership, given where I'm going to be in the next 2-3 years, this one, it can wait. It's not my priority. I don't want to do anything about it. That's why when we take these kind of evaluations, assessments, these are just neutral information. We need to know them. We don't want to have blind spots. But those information should be handled very well. And I agree with you. Somebody should mentor you, train you, coach you so that you can handle those results.